So you've probably seen some headlines lately about the US economy, right? Maybe you even felt a little bit of optimism. I mean, news about shrinking deficits, strong growth. It all sounds pretty good on the surface, but what if there's a completely different story playing out, just behind those numbers?
The big headline is that the US deficit is down. And that leads to a pretty simple question. This is a win, isn't it? Well, today we're going to dig into the source material to see if the answer is really as straightforward as it seems. Okay, let's get right into it. According to the reports cited in our source material, the headlines are, technically, correct. The government is spending less money than it's bringing in, compared to this exact time last year. Let's look at the direct comparison. For the first 3 months of the fiscal year, the deficit fell by $109 billion. That's a 15% drop from the year before. As you can see on the chart, this year's bar is definitely shorter than last year's. I mean, on the face of it, that's a real improvement. But, and this is a really big but that our source material points out, here's the crucial context. Well, yeah, it's better than last year. This year's deficit spending is still higher than it was for several years before that. So it's progress, sure, but it's progress from a very, very high starting point. And you see, this shrinking deficit is only one part of the story, which brings us to the much bigger picture, the national debt. It's so easy to confuse the two, but they are very, very different things. You know, the analysis reminds us of a really fundamental point. A deficit just measures how much you overspent in one single year. Reducing the deficit doesn't mean you're paying off your credit card. It just means you're adding to the balance at a slightly slower rate. The total debt is still going up. The source material uses a really simple but brilliant analogy to make this point. It's like being happy that you're only gaining 8 pounds this year instead of the 10 you gained last year. I mean, okay, it's an improvement, but the reality is you're still getting heavier. The underlying problem isn't actually solved. So, if the deficit is shrinking, the government is either cutting spending or increasing its revenue. Well, our source material points to where a big chunk of that new revenue is coming from, and it turns out it has a direct impact on retirees. A huge driver of this deficit reduction is a 10% jump in the collection of individual income and payroll taxes compared to last year. So the big question is, who is paying all this extra tax? This analysis lays out what it calls a tax trap. Think about it. For decades, people have been doing the right thing, saving diligently in tax-deferred accounts like 401ks and IRAs. Now, a massive wave of baby boomers is hitting retirement age, and they're starting to pull that money out. And every single dollar withdrawn is taxed as ordinary income. The government is finally cashing in on decades of untaxed investment growth. And the scale here is just mind-blowing. The source estimates there is $29 trillion sitting in these tax-deferred accounts. That is a massive, massive pool of money that is now, for the very first time, becoming taxable revenue for the government as retirees begin to draw it down. So, given this potential tax trap, the source material shifts gears and starts to explore an alternative strategy for building retirement wealth, one that's designed to be tax-free. And this brings us to a financial product called Indexed Universal Life, or IUL. So what is an IUL? Well, at its core, it's a form of permanent life insurance. But what makes it so different, according to the source, is its ability to build up a cash value that's linked to a stock market index, which you can then access as tax-free income during your retirement. And based on a survey mentioned in the source material, people aren't just using these for a death benefit anymore. It's really seen as a multi-purpose tool for everything from retirement income and business planning to simply accessing that cash value whenever you might need it. The analysis then goes on to debunk a couple of common myths. First, there's this idea that IUL is only for the super rich. It argues it's actually a powerful tool for middle-class America. And second, while, yeah, it can seem complex, the survey showed that 83% of people do their own homework and educate themselves before they ever even talk to a professional. And this all boils down to one key distinction. The argument is that the best candidate for this kind of strategy isn't necessarily someone who's already wealthy, but someone who is a good saver. It's about the discipline to save, not just your current net worth. And that focus on personal discipline, on being a good saver, connects perfectly to the final concept from our source material. It's a mindset shift that the analysis argues is absolutely essential for any kind of financial success, and it frames it as the $2 accountability rule. The concept, which the source credits to Buckminster Fuller, is Pretty simple. You can live below the line, wasting all your energy on blame, making justifications, or feeling shame. Or you can choose to live above the line, where you actually make progress by taking responsibility and being accountable. To enforce this, they share a story about a really simple game. Anytime someone hears a colleague operating below the line, blaming or justifying something, they can just ask them, "Was that $2?" And get this, the material tells a story of a Fortune 500 company that actually tried this. For 90 days, every single time someone was caught below the line, they had to put $2 in a jar. They ended up collecting $250,000 for charity, and the company's productivity reportedly went through the roof. I mean, the message behind that is so powerful. Whether you're managing a huge company or just your own personal finances, success doesn't come from blaming your circumstances or justifying why you can't do something. It comes from proactive accountability. So, as we've seen, a simple headline about a shrinking deficit can hide a much more complex story about national debt, about retirement taxes, and about the strategies we use to plan for our future. And according to our source, successfully navigating that future really comes down to one last question for you. When you think about your own finances, are you operating above the line or below it?